A study by the University of Witwatersrand has identified two genetic variants linked to breast cancer in black South African women genetics factors and contribute to about 30% of breast cancer cases in South Africa. For more on this, let's now talk to Dr. Mahtaab Hayat, a researcher at the Sydney Brenner Institute of Molecular Bioscience at the University of Witwatersrand. Doctor, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. And one would ask, these are major developments when it comes to research for cancer, particularly to black African women.
Hi, Mbali, and thanks for having me. Yes, absolutely. We know that, genomic studies in sub-Saharan African women have not been carried out at all. In fact, the study that we did is the first of its kind on South African black women. And so we really are at the beginning of discovering hopefully many, many more genetic variants linked to breast cancer.
And if maybe you can give us a bit more insight when it comes to these two new breast cancer genetics which have been found.
Yeah, so we found two genetic variants in three different genes. So the one genetic variant was between two genes, and the second one was within a gene, and all three of these genes are linked to breast cancer or cancer somehow. So either they are involved in tumor suppression or the growth of tumors, or they're involved in metastases of cancers, or they're just being present in breast cancer tissue. And while these particular mutations have not been associated with breast cancer previously, that's what makes it a very exciting discovery, is that it's quite novel.
And what does that say about the fight in breast cancer, particularly now when you're picking up new trends?
It basically means, so in non-African populations, the breast cancer genomic scene has been pretty well set. And because African populations are very different to non-African populations, because they're older and harbor a lot of genetic variation, what has been discovered in non-African populations can't be applied to African populations. And so what we're seeing will hopefully help in screening as well as diagnosis of breast cancer. And we can also look into personalized medication further down the line.
And I know that, this discovery which has been made is in the genes, so it would be a genetic. Can you maybe give us a bit of information when it comes to what could also be the cause of this gene in which you have found?
Sure. So I'd like to maybe make a distinction between the two main types of breast cancers that you can get. So the one is inherited, so it comes from your family. And the second type is based on common genetic variation that everyone has. So it just depends on the combination of genetic variants that a person would have, and that would increase their likelihood of developing breast cancer. And this is what this study looks at. And so by knowing what combination of genetic variation you have, this could inform your, how often you would go for screening screenings, mammograms, self-breast examinations, etc. And by knowing this, previously we've not been able to have any sort of genetic screening mechanisms put into place, but because this is the start of it, we're working towards that.
And doctor, does age play a factor in the new research you have found?
Age does play a factor, particularly in the common genetic variation that we're looking at. So the older you are, the more likely it is that you would maybe develop breast cancer. But that's not to say that younger women can't develop breast cancer as well. So it's very important that if you do find that you're at risk, you really should be being careful and screening yourself or going for mammograms consistently to be able to try and catch the cancer before it reaches a stage in which you can't treat it.
And what is your advice to South African women, particularly black South African women who may find cancer in their hereditary? What is your advice in terms of, ensuring that regular screening is done to ensure that they do fight breast cancer, particularly if it's found in their genes?
I think knowing how to do a breast examination is the most important thing, and doing it monthly at the same time is very helpful. And if you're able to identify a difference, when you're doing these breast examinations by yourself, that's when you can take it further to a doctor or a clinic or a hospital and have it looked at a little more seriously. Because if you catch it early, you're more likely to be able to treat it as opposed to catching it when it's already metastasized, when it's already spread. And then it's a lot harder to treat.
And what are the other symptoms maybe that women can look out for, particularly when they continue to self-examine?
So with self-examination is just basically changes in your breast features, but there are varied symptoms that you could feel, but the most often is pain around the breast tissue or under your arms, and sometimes there's also secretions that are not normal.
All right, Dr. Mahtaab Hayat, thank you so much for your time. That's Dr. Mahtaab Hayat, the researcher at the Sydney Brenner Institute of Molecular Science at the University of Witwatersrand.